All right, so we had mentioned this story before we got on the canine tangent there, and then we proceeded to have all of our lines explode simultaneously with people wanting to call in, as well as people sending us photos of their dogs, and it's amazing. Look, I totally get it. Most people I know who have a dog. If you ask them to show you a photo of their dog on their phone, they have like collage after collage, right? So people love their canines, as do I. But we wanted to talk about this story out of San Francisco, and here is the CNN piece on this. Just if you're wondering, because this is why I think, Clay, it's important. They spent a lot of time, especially last year around this time. There were these news stories like the crime isn't that bad. Like, look at the statistics. It's actually, they'd say, well, vehicular homicide is down from year to year. So the crime, he's saying. Everywhere I go, there's just people stealing stuff all the time. Okay, and this was in New York City. Everything, it's just, and you go to Chicago, you go to LA, you go to these major cities, and there's a siege mentality that has filtered in because people just feel like they're witnessing crime all the time. The numbers in terms of overall losses for some of these businesses, staggering. Like hundreds of millions of dollars lost, I think, from Target, and hundreds of millions of dollars lost from the big drugstore chains.
With tiny profit margins in retail to begin with, right? So this is important as you analyze. This is not Google where they're like tripling their money with their profit margins and everything else. If you own a retail business, your profit margin is tiny to begin with.
So just so we give you numbers. Last year, CVS, the drugstore chain, which I think is one of the biggest in the country,
right?
I mean, it's pretty much everywhere. $200 million in losses, over $200 million in losses to theft.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money, everybody. I mean, even for CVS. And to Clay's point, you start looking at the profit margins. So they end up shutting down. They shut down some of these stores. The worst store for I think this is also in a CVS, isn't it?
No, Walgreens. The worst.
Oh, it's a Walgreens. Sorry.
In the entire United States. I think they have 9,000 Walgreens stores. This is the single worst, according to CNN, for theft in the entire country. And not surprisingly, it's in San Francisco.
Play cut 5.
In the 30 minutes we were at this Walgreens, we watched 3 people, including this man, steal.
Did that guy pay? Did that guy pay? He didn't pay.
Walgreens says this Richmond neighborhood store with aisles of products like mustard locked behind plexiglass has the highest theft rate of all their nearly 9,000 U.S. stores, hit more than a dozen times a day. When thieves turned to cleaning out ice cream and frozen burritos, workers grew so frustrated they resorted to the chains. They were ordered down by corporate because of the negative messaging.
Clay, they had to chain up their freezers, and then the recognition publicly that this is what's going on in a Walgreens in San Francisco, it was so, there's so much, oh my gosh, that came out of it that they said, no, fine, just let people steal instead. We don't want all the photos of our ice cream under literal lock and key protection, chains, to be out there. You sit there and you say, I remember when California had the 3 strikes law, right? And now I think now it's only for felonies or something, but they used to tell us, oh, if you steal or if you do anything, 3 strikes, it was so harsh, it was so severe. I just feel like we need to all come together as a society here. This should be even above partisanship. And, if you steal once, yeah, I get it. People make mistakes. You steal twice, look, you got to stop doing that. You steal a third time, you got to do some time. I don't know why this is such a difficult concept because the lawlessness only gets worse, too. The people who steal also, sell fentanyl to people if they keep doing it enough. And then someone dies from a fentanyl over. What are you're looking at?
I can't imagine having to put mustard under lock and key. You have a severe...
You're throwing shade at mustard right now? Is that what that is? Wow,
if we're about to get a big mustard deal, I apologize. It's one thing if a candy bar gets stolen, like somebody's going to eat a candy bar or whatever. Even some of this other stuff you mentioned, like the things that have a value on the street. You have to put mustard under lock and key? Who is out there? Who among us right now has ever been, if you had to steal something from a convenience store, mustard has to rank like 974th on your power rankings of things to steal at a convenience store. It means truly the whole store, Buck, has to be under lock and key. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, this is what's happened. You've seen a progression, right? We all know. What was the first thing? They would put razors, because a little package of razors,
super expensive, and
it's like
easy
$35
to sell.
or something. It's crazy how expensive they are. So a little package of razors, they had to lock those up. And then they started locking up more expensive cosmetics, and then they started locking up chocolate actually pretty early on in New York. I saw that because I'm a big chocolate. I love chocolate. So, I have to get the person to come over, and I always feel a little shamed. Like, yes, I've eaten all my GR Deli squares.
I didn't even think about that. If you're a fat person trying to buy chocolate, it's embarrassing to have to ask people. Of course, you're buying chocolate, fatty.
Ran out of my sea salt caramel. I just need a little more. So I don't feel great about it. But anyway, but they got to a point where they had to start locking down, because eventually they're like, well, it's just easier to steal the mustard and try to sell that. Remember, it's all profit to the thieves. So if they steal a $10 thing of mustard and they sell it to somebody for $2 on the street, they've made $2. It doesn't matter, and there's no punishment. As a matter of law, there's no punishment for this stuff.
Who's buying mustard from a bootlegger? I mean, this is where I'm going to. Like, I would totally expect that I was going to die. Like, what do you got? Well, I've got, razors.
Grey Poupon.
Yeah, here's some. Is it like spicy mustard or the French's mustard? I mean, if you would steal mustard, you basically can't have the store, right? Like, literally everything is, and this is the point here. People say, okay, why are you focusing on this store in San Francisco? This is where left-wing policies lead you, Buck. This is what there's no competing political party in San Francisco. There is no viable alternative to the Democrat Party. There's nobody out there trying to sell a different vision. They have a unity party, and it is Democrats are the answer. And what's happened? Without conflict of ideas, without a marketplace of people trying to sell differing political values, this is where left-wing governance leads. Even in a beautiful, you've been to San Francisco a lot. I've been to San Francisco. It's one of the most beautiful cities in America. And it's filled, interestingly, with some of the wealthiest people in America. And they have so given themselves over to left-wing ideology that they have destroyed one of the crown jewels of American city life.
I think also everyone should just know this is a choice. There's a choice that's being made. And the choice is that they don't want to enforce the law because they don't want to lock the people up who are breaking the laws. That's it. They think that there's something wrong with this system. And so the decision, an active decision, has been made by the left in this country, by the Democrat Party, that we all have to suffer more. They spread the suffering across society. It is a tiny percentage of any city, any place in the country you go to that are committing almost all of the crimes, especially all of the serious crimes. It is less than 1%, whether you're living in New York or Atlanta or LA or Chicago or Dallas or whatever. It is less than 1% of your residents are committing all of the serious crimes. And this is just the data. And instead of dealing with that and saying, we're going to protect the 99% of people, and if you break the law, you're going to pay the price. It's, oh, come on, we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't lock people up. It's not fair. The system is bad. All the stuff. And it hasn't changed. I think that's the part of this too, Clay. People have now seen this. The lies of, it was COVID. They used to say it was COVID. You remember that? COVID caused the crime wave.
And the other consequence here is, it's interesting that they mentioned in that cut that we played, the employees. The ultimate loser here is everyone who wants to work at the Walgreens like that. In addition to, one, your job is awful because you're constantly having people steal, and I'm sure the people who are stealing are not particularly respectful of the overall sanity and security of the store itself. But what happens, Buck? Eventually, Walgreens gets upset about a story like this, that CNN, it's so bad CNN's doing it, that's so bad that people are stealing while the CNN cameras are rolling, that eventually they decide to shut down that Walgreens. And what happens then? Well, everybody who works there in that neighborhood loses their job. And then it becomes more difficult to find a job in that neighborhood. The retailer itself the person who owns that location, who is renting to Walgreens, that person then has, I think we're at 35% commercial real estate vacancy rate right now in San Francisco. There isn't a new place to come in and fill that shop. So you have a boarded up street corner, and all of that is a doom cycle, right? Everything gets worse as a result of not deciding to enforce the law in that location.
They've decided at some level, I think, really at the top level, that theft is a victimless crime. It's just stuff. You'll hear them say that sometimes. And some of the policies these stores have now is don't do anything, it's just stuff. Don't do anything, it's just stuff. I mean, imagine if I told Democrats, I just don't want to pay taxes anymore. It's just stuff. It's just money. Why do you need it? What's the problem? Well, they would say, well, if everybody did that, all of a sudden they would recognize it's a problem. Well, what do they think is happening with theft? A lot of people are doing it, and it's having a real impact.
Did you see the story at Lowe's? They fired a longtime employee for trying to stop someone from shoplifting. Now, that to their credit at Lowe's, they hired this woman back. But employees are getting fed up with what's going on at their place of employment, and they don't even own the business. Imagine, Buck, if you owned a business and your livelihood was being taken out as part of that $200 million in CVS theft. The profit at these tiny little mom and pop owned shops is minuscule, and they're taking money directly out of your pocket. It is significant.